Okay.
Little cooler in here.
Yeah, this is better. This is better. So we're going to do other police topics, any and all police topics. We're then going to talk about the weather situation, and then we'll take general topics. So let's first do questions on police topics. Yes?
In light of the Fort Myers nightclub shootings, is there anything that the NYPD is doing to protect nightclub patrons or any safety steps involved in this?
Let me ask Bob Boyce, Chief of Detectives, come up, what we know about that situation, the nightclub down there. Certainly the nightclub incident in Orlando, very different motivation apparently. But we put a lot of focus on nightclubs, as you know, as a result of the increase in stabbings that we'd experienced earlier in the year, some of them being involved in nightclub-type activity. So, Bob, I believe you're here.
Yes, I am.
Right down at the end.
Yeah, just in Fort Myers area, we're in touch with their police department there. That appears to stem from an ejection from the bar earlier with some gang issues. Right now, it's still emerging, so it's hard to say. So we've talked with them down there. It's wholly different from the Orlando situation of a couple weeks ago. In New York City, we reinvigorated our vice division and went out and visited different clubs. As the commissioner said, we had a slew of stabbings early in the year at nightclubs. We've had basically none since. So with those visits, to make sure everything is fine, collaboration with the club owners to make sure if they have a problematic person to call immediately or don't let them in. So, and that's handled on a borough level. So each borough commander is specifically tasked with coming up with a problematic club location. And those are visited quite often by both borough personnel as well as the vice division. So we've done well recently by concentrating on that problem we had earlier this year.
Ozzy?
How much of a change in tone and priorities do you want to make when you select the commissioner that's going to replace Bratton?
Kind of jumping the gun
Yeah,
on that
but
one. I'm
like,
still here.
Ozzy.
The last time I checked,
He's sitting right here, Ozzy. He's sitting, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think Bill Bratton's doing an extraordinary job as police commissioner, and we are truly unified in our vision for safety in this city. And as long as I'm mayor, I welcome him to continue being police commissioner. That's all we have to say about it. Yeah.
Follow up on what Ozzy just mentioned. It was reported just a little while ago in the Times that you had said you're not going to stay beyond 2017 election. Is that accurate, or is that really an extenuation of what you said previously?
I think well over a year ago, that question was asked, and I responded then, as I did in the most recent interview with the Times, that I would not intend to stay into a second term, one, if the mayor decides to run, and two, is elected, which I'm pretty confident he will be. So the idea is that that's still, what, a year and a half away. That is, throughout my career, 94 to 96 here, 2002 to 2009 in Los Angeles, and literally since my appointment in 2014, there was always speculation about how long I'm staying anywhere. There's never a good time to leave something that you love doing, but there's a right time. That when I find that right time, that's when, with the consultation with the mayor, I'll decide to go. But fortunately, I have his full faith and confidence, so I'm not worried about getting kicked out of the place, fortunately. And things are going very well, I think, as you're aware, that crime numbers looking good, continue to look good going forward. And the support of this mayor and through the city council, we just showed you what has been going on the last 30 months here. We're in a good place, and my expectation is we're going to get into even better places with all of the equipment and the training we're working on.
Other questions? Yes.
Yeah, regarding terrorism, we've seen things like freezer track being used as a weapon. We've seen like flat explosive vests around the world, homegrown extremists. So do you make any changes in the NYPD's overall counterterrorism strategy?
Certainly, we are constantly evolving to meet the evolving threats, so that when Commissioner Miller and I came into office in 2014, the threat was morphing. ICES was now coming onto the stage and has effectively become the lead performer on the stage, and their encouragement of these lone wolves that we've seen a significant increase of their activity, foreign incidents as well as here in the United States. So the mayor very quickly supported the request so that we now have the CRC, Unit Critical Response Command, and that group you've reported widely on. They're backed up by the SRG. Both of those groups back up the already in place Emergency Service Unit. Chief Galati, who runs intelligence, and then Chief Waters counterterrorism with Commissioner Miller, constantly changing and modifying what they do, their intelligence. We have worked to ensure we have seamless relationships with all of our federal colleagues, and there's not one of them that will not vouch for that there's never been a better relationship than what we have. And the mayor has really supported everything we've done over these periods of time to meet the constantly emerging threat. And indeed, what we displayed for you this morning was that evolution, that it's incumbent upon us to protect our officers better than we have in the past. So we're acquiring that equipment for them to meet the new and emerging threats.
I would add, when you look at the tragedy in Nice, that type of attack had been considered previously by the NYPD, and measures are put in place at major public gatherings to protect against that kind of attack, whether it's a vehicle with a bomb in it or without. So that's where you see a lot of checkpoints, you see a lot of the blocks and other physical barriers in place, and obviously a huge amount of personnel. This is something that's really, for me, an article of faith about how we prevent terror, is to have sufficient personnel available and well-trained personnel, and particularly the specialized units that the commissioner referred to. I think we've watched each incident and tried to make adjustments, but in some cases we're seeing things that the NYPD had long assumed would come to pass and had already put in measures to protect against.
An example of that evolution that John Miller has left this morning for Aspen, counterterrorism conference down there that he's representing me at the first 2 days, and I'll be down there on Thursday to continue into Saturday. The top terrorism experts in this country and indeed from around the world will be there for a week talking about what's going on around the world, and that'll be both from the military perspective, the intelligence perspective, and the foreign perspective. So I think you've heard me talk frequently that as commissioner this time, I spend 30 to 40% of my time on terrorist-related types of activity versus back in 94, 96, it was pretty much crime all the time. And so that's how it's evolved since 94, 96.
Other police questions? Right here first.
Yeah, Commissioner, you talked about training all officers to be able to deal with the situation of an active shooter, to be able to go in and act and solve the situation for months. What is the status of that training, and how will the new training of all the equipment really do that? Will it take longer now?
The training, active shooter training, we have trained close to 5,000 officers. I think it's 4,900. And we are prioritizing certainly our patrol force, our transit officers, our housing officers. And that training is moving forward on a very accelerated schedule. Additionally, that we're giving many of our personnel one-day training. When they go for their firearms training twice a year, that training will be enhanced to encompass active shooter issues. Additionally, I think we have put out either 3 or 4 training bulletins, video bulletins on our smartphones. The officers on their smartphones now have apps where they can go on to the training app and receive special instructions. We have the capability of when they access that app, we know they accessed it, we know they stayed on for the length of time that the training video plays. So we're seeking to use every medium at our disposal to give them the training necessary to deal with the constantly emerging situations. And as we learn something new, that we modify very quickly. Again, watching what happened in Dallas and Baton Rouge, that the decision of the mayor last week to authorize the $7.5 million was a direct response to concerns that we saw down there.
Okay. Hold on 1 second. You go ahead.
Commissioner, could you elaborate on why leaving after this term is the, as you say, the right choice, the right time, rather? So there's always a
For sure. There's, in life, in terms of if things are going well, there's never a good time to leave when things are going well, but there's a right time. And whether in personal life, professional life, and that's something in my life I've tried to always do. In other words, to find the right time that to cause a minimum disruption if possible. I think when I left the Los Angeles Police Department in 2009, that was the right time. And I don't know about 96, that when I left in 96, that might have been the right time for somebody else, not for me at that time.
Okay, in the back, yes.
Any updates on the Bronx shooting, double homicide?
Yes, Bob Boyce has the particulars on the several murders that we had overnight that you might have interest in. So, Bob, if you could, just a quick summary on those, please.
We had a double homicide about 5 o'clock in the morning on Weeks Avenue in the Bronx in the 4-6 precinct. A male and a female were shot. They are known to each other. We don't believe it's in a romantic relationship right now. Singular weapon, which we recovered from the seat, from the area. It was recovered from a top of a tire underneath the car. So right now we have that the young lady's husband in the precinct. He's described. We showed him the video, and he says he knows this individual from the neighborhood. So right now it's right in the midst. We're a couple hours into this. We think it's going very well. The investigation. We'll find out what happened. Additionally, in the Bronx last night, in the 4-7 precinct on Barker Avenue, we had a domestic stabbing homicide where a husband stabbed his wife to death. He soon thereafter turned himself into the 4-9 precinct. So he's under arrest, and he admitted to such, and he left a note at the scene. Those are the incidents in the Bronx on the overnight.
To point out that as July comes to a close, that the shootings in the city are down still about 20%. Similarly, homicides as of this morning are down also about 7%. Overall crime down about 0.5%. So as we're now 2/3 of the way through the summer, that numbers are still trending very well overall.
Yep.
About the bodies of the 2 women found in Brooklyn, 2 separate parts?
Yeah, there's a young lady who was found in Broward Park in the 7-7 precinct. We've identified her. There was another male who was found in the Lower East Side in a housing development there. We've connected those 2 individuals. They're known to each other, their boyfriend, girlfriend. So now we're trying to figure out exactly what happened. The male was found in the 9th precinct. He had a syringe still in his arm when he was found on the 3rd floor hallway. She was found in the park covered up as if she was placed there. So we believe they're both overdoses from the heroin, which we speak about often. So right now we're peeling that back. We do have some baggies there. They're not stamped. So we'll do phone records to find exactly what happened. The other young lady, the other woman, I should say, who was found in McCarran Park, it looks like to be a combination of prescription drugs and alcohol. That's what we have right now. She has a medical conditions. I think it was affected by that alcohol use. It's not an overdose, but again, we'll know more when the autopsy's done, and then toxicology afterwards. So we may not know immediately what happened, but they all seem to be that way right now. They're not connected, the two females.
Go ahead.
What can the city, along with the police department, do about what appears to be a growing homeless problem right outside Penn Station? I was there last week and actually saw someone checking the pulse, it seemed like, of a person who was hunched over to see if they were okay. Are you aware that it seems to be getting worse there, and what can be done jointly?
Well, so the difference is out in the streets, obviously, are the city's responsibility, and that's where we have Homestat, so it's a much more aggressive effort to constantly check on any homeless who are on the streets, to the point that we literally know in the vast majority of cases their name, their history, why they say they're there, what they might be willing to consider as a reason to get off the streets, et cetera. That's literally the level of detail we have on each individual in the vast majority of cases. Where there may be any instance of wrongdoing or illegality, NYPD has a specially trained unit that works with the homeless that comes into play. Inside Penn Station, of course, is state jurisdiction, and the state has been working to address it, and we've offered to help in any way we can. But what we do now is anytime we see any uptick, we put additional personnel, whether it's police personnel or the Homestat personnel, on the situation. Yeah.
With regard to the fake bomb incident last week in Times Square, was there any more information as to what the suspect's motive actually was?
It appears right now, from what he said, he wanted to be shot by the police. All right, there wasn't a long history with this fellow. So right now it appears he was asking the police to shoot him. That's what we figured out from that thing right now. The bombs are really rudimentary, and it looks like a severe psychological problem. That's where we are right now with that.
Suicidal?
We believe so. He has to be shot.
That's
We,
pretty
if
suicidal.
I may comment on that this morning the mayor took the opportunity to acknowledge certainly the work of the sergeant and his partner. But at the Columbus Circle scene, there were a significant number of emergency service officers who were very close proximity to that individual while we try to determine if, in fact, he had devices that were potentially active in that vehicle. And with that motivation, looking to be shot by the police, that a lot of attention was focused appropriately on the sergeant, but the performance of ESU in handling that situation, the bomb squad and ESU, was also exemplary. That numerous times as I was watching him, there may have been the potential to shoot him, and they did not. That they showed extraordinary restraint in dealing with that situation.
Mr. Mayor, your thoughts on the Democratic chairman stepping down?
Can we do that after we do police topics? I'll come back to you on that. Go ahead.
Commissioner, almost since your appointment was announced by Mayor de Blasio, you've received a lot of very personal criticism directed at you. Were you surprised by it? Did it play a role in your decision not to stay on for a second term? And were you concerned that you would become a political liability for the mayor?
Let me take the privilege of rank to jump in first. I don't know anyone more mature and experienced in public life than Bill Bratton, and we all sign up for lots of criticism. We know it's going to be part of the landscape, and I've never seen him flinch in the face of criticism. So he can speak for himself, but I'm just going to say, although I respect that every question is trying to get at different things, I've been in so many discussions about what the right thing to do is, regardless of criticism, regardless of political pressure, with this commissioner, and I have never seen him dissuaded by any kind of criticism when he thinks he's doing the right thing.
The criticism drives my wife crazy. Being quite frank, it doesn't bother me at all. I've been in the business 45 years, twice as long as probably you've been alive, and have during that time suffered a lot of slings and arrows, and still here standing. It comes with the territory. Abe Lincoln's old admonition: you can please some of the people some of the time, but you're not going to please all of them all of the time. That's the reality of public life today. I have remained true to my principles, what I believe about the professionalism of policing and advancing it. I'm very fortunate at this stage of my career to have teamed up with this mayor and have had, I believe, significant success at a time of great controversy in this country, continuing to advance the professionalism of American policing and its sensitivity to the constantly changing issues and priorities. So criticism comes with the territory, and fortunately I think the critics are in the minority and versus the majority. And there are 8.5 million people in New York City who are the majority that I'm basically sworn to serve. And there are some that will never like me. Well, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it.
Amen. We'll do a few more on policing, then we're going to go to the heat situation and to general topics. Yes.
Yeah, there have been some complaints from female officers about not being allowed to express breast milk on the job. Can you explain, does the NYPD have a policy towards that?
That issue is a new one to me. It will be dealt with, and I don't have the particulars on it. My understanding, it involves one woman on the department. That we have many women on the department who have children, as you know, both police officers and civilian. So we'll take a look at her particular circumstance, but the department tries in every way possible to accommodate pregnancies, not only of the pregnant woman, but the families that are involved also.
Yeah. So I think the bottom line on that is we're going to find an appropriate way to accommodate her and other women who need that time. Yeah.
Chief O'Neill, you were floated in the Times article as a likely successor to the commissioner. I'm wondering if the two of you have had conversations about the job and your thoughts on if you want the job.
The beauty of my job is it's apolitical. I love what I do. I love being a cop. I love this uniform. So however I can serve the city well. But I enjoy this, and I enjoy seeing what the courageous men and women of the NYPD do every day. So I love my job.
And have the two of you talked about you potentially?
Yeah, just let me cut off the line of questioning with a simple statement. We've said very, very clearly, my point of view is this commissioner is doing a great job. He's made clear he's not prepared to stay into a second term. I absolutely respect that, especially after all that he's given to this city over the years. And that's all there is to say at this moment. All right, we're going to weather issues. Let me give you an update. We're going to bring Joe Esposito up here, our OEM commissioner. Welcome, Joe. So it was a hot weekend for sure. Now we're going to see temperatures climb to 95 degrees today, and it will probably be similar tomorrow. That's what we're hearing at this moment. So today we have a combination of heat and humidity will produce a heat index above 100 degrees. So very important to let the people of the city know this is going to be very exceptional heat today. And very important that we look out for those who are in particular need. Our seniors, children, people with pre-existing health conditions, respiratory conditions, for example, really flare up in this kind of environment. Asking all New Yorkers, look out for your family, look out for your neighbors that might be in any situation where this heat causes them particular duress. Also want to emphasize as a parent to my fellow parents, never leave a child unattended in a car in this kind of heat. It could be a very, very dangerous situation. We have seen some power outages around the city. Joe can go into that. Generally, the power outages have been resolved quickly, but it is imperative that all New Yorkers understand we all have a role to play in avoiding power outages. That's why we really want people to take heed of the instruction to set thermostats to 78 degrees. 78 degrees will keep you cool enough, it will keep you safe, but it will allow us to protect against blackouts and power outages, and no one wants to go through that. So this is a situation where an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Ask everyone to set their thermostats to 78 degrees. We are going to be very vigilant around homeless individuals who are out in the street and may be in danger. It's a code red alert now for Department of Homeless Services, so extra care will be taken looking out for any homeless who may be in duress or distress. Key ideas for the day: if you don't have to be outside, don't be outside. Drink lots of water, real basics. We have 500 plus cooling centers around the city for anyone who does not have a cool environment of their own. They can go to one of them. They're open, they're free. Again, keep an eye on neighbors. We've talked about this before. If you are inspired to use a fire hydrant to cool off, the only way to do that appropriately is with a spray cap from the FDNY. They will give you one. Don't do it yourself, or you could actually undermine the water pressure and make the situation dangerous on your block. And we're going to have a lot of the water on the go fountains available across the 5 boroughs. You'll see a lot of those out and about. Anyone who wants to know where those are can dial 311. And if you feel you're in danger, seek help. Again, the danger of heat can sneak up on people. If anyone feels they're unsafe, it's important to seek help. Also, last but not least, keep an eye out for your pets. They go through the same exact conditions that we do. Quickly in Spanish, and then we'll take questions, and Joe will help me out with that. Está haciendo mucho calor y este clima puede ser peligroso. Por favor, eviten el sol y beben mucha agua. Verifiquen la condición de sus vecinos y usen aire acondicionado. With that, we're going to take questions on the heat wave, and then we'll go to general topics. Anything about the heat wave? Questions? Yes.
And this may be for Commissioner Blasio as well. Could you elaborate more on what efforts are being taken to ensure there aren't blackouts or brownouts?
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, Con Ed, the PSE&G monitoring the situation citywide. We have people, my shop has people in their command center monitoring the conditions every minute. Over the weekend, some of the actions they took was voltage reduction, which means if you get a 5% voltage reduction, usually you won't notice any type of results. When you go to an 8%, which we had in a couple of areas over the weekend, you might see your lights getting a little dimmer, the air conditioner may not work as well, and you could have some issues with some elevators because there's a lot of juice to run the elevators. So Con Ed is on it, constantly monitoring it, and if they need to, they can shed some load, do a reduction, and they got extra crews on hand to address anything that does come up. Over the weekend, we had almost over 4,000 customers without power. The majority of them were in Staten Island and Upper Manhattan, and that was adjudicated by late Saturday, early Sunday. So Con Ed, PSE&G, they're on it constantly. Right now, there are about 51 customers citywide that are out, and we're staying on top of it.
And is there a greater concern now that we're in a work week with people in offices using elevators, for instance, and more air conditioning?
Well, there's always a concern when the weather's this hot. The heat index is going to be over 100 today. So we know that people are not going to listen to some of the recommendations that we make. They're going to crank the air conditioner up. We ask them to listen to what we said. But yeah, look, and it runs in cycles. The financial district, the areas where you have a lot of businesses, Manhattan, Lower Manhattan, on the weekends, there's not that big of a strain. There'll be a bigger strain today. And then ultimately, normally when you go home at night, people, what do? They crank up their air conditioners. So we monitor all those situations.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize, it's really, this is a common sense thing. No one wants to go through another blackout, and no one wants to have their building without power. You can do something about it. It's really important. It's put up with a little less comfort. 78 degrees, you're still going to be okay. If it was a normal day outside, it was 78 degrees, everyone would say, what a nice day. So if it's 78 degrees inside, you're going to be okay. But you're going to also help, because imagine if every single human being cranks up the air conditioning the way Joe just said, you're unfortunately running a big risk of a blackout for all of us. Anything else on the weather? Questions related to the weather situation, the heat wave going once, twice, 3 times. Okay, someone in the back had a question earlier. Go ahead.
What are your thoughts on the Democratic chairman stepping down?
Debbie Wasserman Schultz? Yeah, it was time for her to go. There obviously were a number of revelations that were very troubling. And I think it was important for her to move on so that we can focus on Hillary Clinton and electing Hillary Clinton, focus on the unity of the Democratic Party. I certainly understand the frustrations that a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters felt about her. And if we're going to have a unified party, that takes some real work, and it can't be done with someone who unfortunately is seen as compromised. In the back.
You talk about a unified party. In terms of New York State, the Democratic Party is not unified. Why can you and the governor not pull this together, and what impact does it have on residents?
I've said many times, I think when it comes to getting the work done, we're getting done what we need to in New York City constantly. Lower crime, higher graduation rate, more affordable housing, you name it. When it comes to Albany, the challenges we face in Albany are unfortunately a bit historic. A Republican state Senate that's not sympathetic to the city. And there's often been differences between governors and mayors. So I'll always look to work with the governor whenever we can. And when I think he's doing something right for New York City, I will commend him. I'll work with him. When I think he's doing something wrong, I'll call it out. I just think that's the reality we face. We'll keep working on it. But I think that's a different question than whether the Democratic Party and Democrats in this state are united in terms of electing Hillary Clinton. I think the notion that Donald Trump has put forward that New York State is competitive is preposterous. This is a Democratic state. This is a state that has tremendous respect for Hillary Clinton. And all of us, even when there's differences on some other issues, all of us will be working shoulder to shoulder to elect Hillary Clinton.
But do you think it hurts city residents when you and the governor are not on the same page?
I think it hurts city residents when the governor or the state Senate don't support the interests of New York City. And it's my job to protect the interests of New York City. And when they do the right thing for New York City, that's very important. That's very good. That can do a lot of good for us. But I think, respectfully, I just don't agree with the premise of the question. There's not a sort of perfect world where everyone can agree on everything. It is a reality. We go issue by issue. And my job is to defend the interests of New York City. When that is being done properly, when New York City is being supported properly by Albany, that's great. We saw some instances that pre-K is a great example. It took some struggle, but we got there. And we've certainly seen that on school aid as well. There have been other areas where we haven't seen that, like affordable housing and 421A. So this, unfortunately, to me, is the way things are right now in Albany because of the positions of the governor, because of the Republican state Senate. My job is to fight issue by issue to get the best I can for New York City.
Governor, sorry.
Well, I appreciate the promotion. Is that all it took?
What's your plan to help support people in Williamsburg, Greenpoint further out with the 18-month L train closure? Are you going to do the dedicated bus lane over the Williamsburg Bridge?
So we're looking at that very seriously. First of all, I'll remind everyone the MTA is run by the state of New York. The amount of time that they have projected, the 18 months, is a very big concern for me and for the city government. We're going to have some very serious conversations with the MTA about whether it has to take that long and how it's going to be handled. I want to make sure there's a lot of redundancy in place. By the time it happens, one small but important factor is we'll have the citywide ferry service in place, so that'll be helpful, but we're going to need a lot more than that, obviously. So I want to press the MTA to show us that 300,000 riders really will have good and consistent alternatives, and we're certainly going to look at what we have to do in terms of the bridge as part of that, and we'll have an answer on that after those discussions with the MTA.
Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering if there are other high-level commissioners, deputy mayors you're expecting to leave on the same timeline as Commissioner Bratton, and whether you have a search committee going, Alicia Glenn, Carmen Farina, Carl
Yeah,
White.
you guys are really early today. We're in the 31st month of the administration. There's a presidential election coming up. Then there's a mayoral election. We've got a lot of things we have to think about in the here and now. So no, there's not any such apparatus in place, and we'll cross all those bridges when we get to them.
And none of those others have given you notice of any kind?
Again, I think you're in a very premature place. It can sometimes yes, sometimes no, but that's not the point. It's 31 months in. Right now, we have a huge amount of work to do for this city. That's what we're focused on. Each individual has their own life, their own timeline. We'll deal with it at the time, but it's something we do all the time. There's plenty of good talent out there. Yes.
Donald Trump Jr. said that he wouldn't rule out running against you next year. How do you feel about that? And would you welcome a challenge from one of the Trump kids?
I would say it this way. First of all, the broad point I make, I'm very proud of the fact that crime has gone down in this city. I'm very proud of the fact that we've increased graduation rates, that we're producing more affordable housing, that we're doing the things that people of the city demand. And I'll put that record up against anyone. I'm very comfortable with anyone and everyone who wants to challenge me coming forward. In terms of Donald Trump Jr., I will predict something right here and now, that his father and his values will be rejected soundly by the people of New York City in November. So if after that he thinks it's a great idea to run against me, be my guest.
Mayor Blasio, what do you think about former Mayor Michael Bloomberg supporting Hillary Clinton and also Melissa Marguerito not being able to talk at the Democratic National Convention?
On the first one, I think it's fantastic. I commend Mike Bloomberg for publicly supporting Hillary Clinton. He's obviously a very important voice in this country because he is an independent. And it's good for him to speak to his fellow independents and say that this is a very stark choice. And I think it'll be very helpful. So I'm very happy he's doing that. I think Melissa Marguerito is an extraordinary leader in general, as a leader of this city, but I think she has an important role to play and has been playing nationally. So I certainly would have liked to have seen her speak, but I know there's many pressures on that schedule, and I know it's a tough set of choices for them to make.
Are you pleased so far with how the changes in the quality of life laws are going? I ask because PBA President Pat Lynch is telling us that officers are now less likely to make arrests in these so-called quality of life situations because it's not worth the consequences of potential liability. So how do you respond?
I'll speak to it, and if my colleagues want to join in, of course, they're welcome. This has become, the ultimate broken record. Any changes made in NYPD, and Pat Lynch says officers aren't going to do their jobs. I'd like to understand, therefore, why our officers are doing better and better work all the time. And you can have anyone with eyes to see can see crime going down, violence going down, order improving, complaints against police going down, gun seizures going up. I mean, the statistics are unbelievable. They're so consistent. They're so strong. I think our officers are very devoted to doing their job. And what I think was a very valid concern among officers was two things. One, the CCRB process used to take a very long time. We've got that down now to an average of 9 months. We want to drive that down further. And we want it to be fair to officers and community alike. And speedy process is very important there. Second, there used to be lawyers who, unfortunately, I think in an unscrupulous manner, went after our officers for the flimsiest reasons. And it was the habit of the law department for many years to settle those cases rather than fight them. We made a decision, and we put resources behind it, to fight those inappropriate lawsuits, to kind of break the pattern and show those lawyers who would try and take advantage that they would be met with the full force of the New York City government, and we believe that will end that trend substantially. Those kind of initiatives, I think a lot of officers recognize, are there to make sure they don't go through unfair treatment. But if you look at the results, clearly our officers are very assertively doing their job.
I'll echo that. Looking at the fact that gun arrests, one of the more significantly dangerous activities of police officers, are up by 12% in the city. So the representation that somehow or another New York City police officers are not going in harm's way is totally false. And the idea that they're not going in harm's way because they're concerned about lawsuits, I've yet to see during my time a single New York City police officer lose their home or pay a dime out of their own pocket for any of the lawsuits that might be filed against them, many of which we're now determining frivolous, and the mayor has increased by almost 50 attorneys in the city law office to fight these frivolous lawsuits to help defend the rights of police officers when they're doing the right thing. So this is one of those tales that, as the mayor talked about, just broken record, just keeps spinning and spinning. Crime is down in the city dramatically. Shootings are down. We are consciously seeking to issue fewer summonses. We are consciously seeking to make fewer arrests. That's the stated policy of the New York City Police Department. And so what's the problem? The city's a lot safer. I use these medical analogies all the time. If a doctor has cured you of cancer, is he going to keep increasing your chemotherapy and your radiation after you've been cured? That'd be malpractice. It'd be malpractice on our part to keep increasing enforcement when we have decreasing crime. You adjust it based on the need. Thanks for the question.
Mr. Mayor, returning to the DOI report on Rivington House. Not on Rivington House, though. The report seems to show a lot of issues with communication, reports not being read in the first deputy mayor's office. What you've put out thus far is a response to deed restriction. What's your level of concern about the lack of overall communication and other issues that might crop up in that chain of command?
I don't have a concern. I think Tony Shores is one of the finest public servants I've ever ever worked with, and he has an immense amount of material he has to deal with. I think he deals with it very well in a very organized fashion. I think the problem here, as we've indicated, is that there was an underlying policy that should have been reevaluated. In other words, by trying to look at each of the specific deed restriction requests, what we should have done better, and I take full responsibility as the leader of the administration, we should have understood that the underlying policy did not represent our values. When we came in to office, we changed a number of policies related to NYPD. We changed a number of policies related to the Department of Education, and I could go down the list. I think DCAS, by definition, is a less front and center agency. Its work is more obscure, more bureaucratic, if you will. And we missed this one, and we shouldn't have missed it, but we did. But now that we've caught it, we're going to have a very, very different approach that values things entirely differently than how they were valued over the previous 25 years.
Aside from the deed restriction, have you spoken with the first deputy mayor about making sure that commissioners' reports are read and having a better process in place?
Well, I think if you look across the whole range of issues he deals with, the fact that this is one of the only ones you can raise, I don't mean this as a criticism of you, but I'm saying we've all been together now 31 months. This is one of the only things you can say like this. I think it's a pretty damn good batting average on his part. Yeah.
So I reported a couple weeks ago that the police department asked DOT to shut off electricity on Staten Island ferry boats and at the terminals. And in response, within like a week, your administration is now saying they're going to add USB ports. But prior to that, the police department was unable to give me any information about supposed fights over these outlets between riders. And I'm just curious, how is the police department, if these fights actually are happening, how is the police department going to stop them from happening when USB ports are installed?
I would only say that we're trying to address legitimate needs of ferry riders. I'm not sure, and I'll let my colleagues speak to how big an issue it is. I'm not sure it's the biggest problem. There have been some altercations over USB ports. The solution is to try and provide more and try and help accommodate more people.
With more outlets, I think that will assist in reducing confrontation, but in significant fashion, we're going to rely on the well-known genteel and courteous behavior of Staten Islanders as they go back and forth into Manhattan to address that issue with more electric ports open to them. So I think let's see how it goes with additional electric ports open to them, and we'll deal with it as necessary if there are confrontations.
All right, we'll take a few more.
So, Mr. Mayor, what were your thoughts on Donald Trump's nomination acceptance speech at the Republican National Convention?
Profoundly troubling, profoundly. And I think The most troubling part of it was that he denigrated the law enforcement community of this country by suggesting that the country is racked by violence and chaos when in fact our men and women in uniform working with communities have driven down crime for decades. I think it was just a horrible disservice to this country and to the men and women who do this work. And you know, I don't understand anyone who trashes their own country, which is what he was doing in the eyes of the world. He was trying to tell the people of all countries all over the earth that this nation's out of control. Nothing could be farther from the truth. So that will hurt him in the long run. You know, I saw he got his traditional short-term poll bump. It will hurt him in the long run because it's just too much dishonesty in one speech to be sustained.
I was going to ask, so your administration has in the past memorialized decisions and memos that were important to the future of the city. In the Rivington case, the first deputy mayor couldn't recall having, no one else in his office could recall him having made the consequential decision at the heart of this matter, and it was never memorialized anywhere according to the DOI report. Have you talked to the first deputy mayor, and has he explained to you how that happened? And also, why is DOI in a fight with the law department over access there? Are you concerned about
I think it's totally normal. Two different institutions with two different jobs to do. Law department obviously is always going to judge what they think is appropriate. DOI is an investigatory agency. I'm very comfortable that that's normal. I'm sure they'll work it out. I'm very happy for days, weeks, months to keep asking questions about Rivington, answering questions, about Rivington. I want to make very clear, it was a mistake. It shouldn't have happened. It will not happen again. I don't see anything systemic in it. I don't see anything untoward in it. I think it was a situation where something got missed. And again, I have tremendous faith in Tony Shores. And look at the results. You know, he has had amongst the agencies that he works with directly, the NYPD and the Department of Education, both of which have done extraordinary things on Tony's watch, and many others. For those of you, for example, the genteel people of Staten Island who like repaving, what DOT has done with repaving, what DOT has done with Vision Zero. I mean, all that's been with Tony's leadership. So you put up all those successes, and then one mistake was made on a matter that, in the scheme of things, was obscure. I put things in perspective. I'm very comfortable with the way he's handled things. But I can tell you one thing, there will never be another Rivington because the reforms we'll put in place will never allow it, and because the buck will stop with me very specifically. Okay, thanks, everyone.